Since we left shoot-around, 14 children were killed 400 miles from here, and a teacher. And in the last 10 days, we've had elderly black people killed in a supermarket in Buffalo. We've had Asian churchgoers killed in Southern California, and now we have children murdered at school.
That's Steve Kerr, the coach for the Golden State Warriors basketball team. He's about to share how fed up he is with gun violence in the United States. Let's watch.
When are we gonna do something? I'm tired. I'm so tired of getting up here and offering condolences to the devastated families that are out there.
That was during a press conference right before an NBA game, and Kerr decided, you know what, I'm not really interested in discussing this game. I'm interested in discussing what just happened in the country with this mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas. And what really stood out to me about his statements, about what he had to say, was just the passion in which he was sharing his point of view. And it strikes close to home for him because his own father was shot and killed in a university. And so I can understand why he's infuriated. In fact, anyone with a conscience, anyone who's not selfish, self-centered, narcissistic, and concerned about their own profits should be enraged about what's happening in this country, not just with the mass shooting that happened on an elementary school campus in a 4th grade classroom, but all the mass shootings that happen on a regular basis in this country. Everyone should be furious and everyone should be clamoring for a way to solve it. And that is the point that he was trying to make here. He made it passionately, and I want to watch more. Let's take a look.
Enough. There's 50 senators right now who refuse to vote on HR 8, which is a background check rule that the House passed a couple of years ago. It's been sitting there for 2 years. And there's a reason they won't vote on it, to hold on to power. So I ask you, Mitch McConnell, I ask all of you senators who refuse to do anything about the violence and school shootings and supermarket shootings, I ask you, are you going to put your own desire for power ahead of the lives of our children and our elderly and our churchgoers? Because that's what it looks like. You realize that 90% of Americans, regardless of political party, want background check, universal background check. 90% of us, we are being held hostage by 50 senators in Washington who refuse to even put it to a vote, despite what we, the American people, want. They won't vote on it because they want to hold on to their own power. It's pathetic. I've had enough.
Now, look, I thought that what he had to say was important. It's especially important to talk about these things in venues or in environments where you typically don't discuss it, right? I mean, you have all these reporters there, sports reporters, thinking that he's going to comment on this upcoming game. And he used it as an opportunity to voice an incredibly important opinion about what's transpiring in this country with gun violence and mass shootings. But it's not just 50 senators, and I think it's important that he understands that. Now, make no mistake, Republican lawmakers will continue to block any effort to pass just common sense gun legislation, right? Simple things like, hey, maybe we should reconsider things like high capacity magazines. Doesn't mean you're banning guns. People can still get their guns, whether it's for hunting, self-defense, whatever it is, whatever reason law-abiding citizens want guns, okay? But maybe we should reconsider, I don't know, does it really make sense for an 18-year-old to have possession of these high capacity magazines or these assault weapons? Does that make sense? It's just, and look, he is a coach. He's the coach of the Warriors. Legislating is not in his wheelhouse. He's an American who has an opinion and he's sharing it. But what I found so fascinating was that an actual politician just kind of said what he had to say, although he did so in a much more calm, sleepy way, no passion. And when a politician tells us, when are we gonna do something? I think the only real response should be, when are you gonna do something? Let's hear from Joe Biden.
Scripture says, Jill and I have talked about this in different contexts, in other contexts. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. So many crushed spirits. So tonight, I ask the nation to pray for them. Give the parents and siblings the strength in the darkness they feel right now. As a nation, we have to ask, when in God's name are we going to stand up to the gun lobby? When in God's name we do what we all know in our gut needs to be done? And the gun manufacturers have spent 2 decades aggressively marketing assault weapons, which make them the most and largest profit. For God's sake, we have to have the courage to stand up to the industry.
I don't know, Biden. I mean, you tell me. You're the president of the United States. When are we gonna stand up? By the way, we is a weird way of putting it. When are you gonna stand up to the gun lobby? And going back to what Kerr said earlier, when he mentioned 50 senators blocking efforts to pass gun legislation, it's not 50. Joe Manchin just today was like, yeah, I don't really understand why we can't pass like some common sense like gun reform stuff, I don't understand. By the way, I'm not willing to do away with the legislative filibuster. Oh, we know Manchin, a Democrat who blocked social spending, who blocks everything that would actually benefit the lives of Americans, and by the way, his own constituents. You see, the legislative filibuster for senators, especially Democratic senators, is like the most convenient excuse of all time. They would never do away with it. So when you are dealing with a system that's set up in such a way where you would need 60 out of 100 senators rather than a simple majority to pass any legislation, well, the Senate just ends up being a chamber of Congress where everything goes to die unless it's more funding for the military and defense contractors. That'll pass real easily. But that's the priority, right? That's what this country represents, right? This is the country that has branded itself the country of death. That is what they do. So when Joe Biden stands there and says, when are we gonna do something? When are you gonna do something? You're the president. Why aren't you naming names? You're really playing this unity game right now? Why aren't you calling out the very people who are standing in the way of literally saving lives in the country? When are we gonna do something, he says. Can you imagine the most powerful man in the world asking Americans, when are we gonna do something? When is someone gonna stand up to the gun lobby? I don't know, Joe. Why did you wanna be president? To take naps in the middle of the day? It is pathetic even when it comes to rhetoric, an NBA coach like outperforms the president of the United States. And it's also pathetic that the president of the United States asks the same questions that an NBA coach asks. You should have the answers, Biden, but he doesn't.